Today I'm going to be presenting to you Stuart Hall, the godfather of multiculturalism. Stuart Hall is a Jamaican-born British sociologist and is the founder of British cultural studies. Hall is well known for expanding cultural studies to include the concepts of race, gender, and sexuality, incorporating new work from other theorists outside of cultural studies, taking an interdisciplinary approach. In these endeavors, Stuart Hall has gained the reputation of being the godfather of multiculturalism. Hall was born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1932 to a middle-class family of African, British, and Indian heritage. Early in life, while living in Jamaica, Hall had a number of very important life experiences that not only transformed his work, but informed the theories that he built upon and became known for. For example, Hall had a much darker skin complexion than much of his family. His family often stated that he was not allowed to bring home individuals, whether romantically or platonic, who had a darker skin pigmentation than he did. This, along with living in the pigmentocracy of the colonial West Indies, was very important. Hall states that these experiences had a profound impact on his view of the world, including his perception of his identities as they fit, or perhaps more accurately put, did not fit into his surrounding dominant social context, whether in Jamaica or later on in life in Great Britain. While living in Jamaica, Hall attended Jamaica College, which was modeled after the British school system. In an interview, Hall once described himself as a very bright, promising scholar, but explained that his education was classical in nature, and as such was exceedingly formal. This required Hall to seek assistance from his instructors to expand his education to include the works of figures such as T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, Freud, Marx, and Lenin, as well as Caribbean literature. In 1951, Hall was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship to attend the University of Oxford. In the 1950s, Hall was highly influential via the New Left Review, a very important political magazine. In part due to his successful work on this magazine, Hall joined the Birmingham University Center for Contemporary Social Studies, or Cultural Studies, in 1964. It is while at the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies that Hall made one of his primary theoretical contributions. By incorporating and building on the ideas emerging from other fields, such as those of Michel Foucault, Hall centralized the discussion of race, gender, and sexuality in the field of cultural studies, while building considerable credibility to an emerging field of scholarship, which we now know to be cultural studies. In 1979, Hall was appointed a professor of sociology at Open University, where he served until his retirement in 1997. During his tenure at Open University, he also served as president of the British Sociological Association from 1995 to 1997. After Hall passed away in 2014, one of the deans at Open University was quoted as saying that Hall was a committed and influential public intellectual on the New Left who embodied the spirit of what OU has always stood for: openness, accessibility, a champion for social justice, and of the power of education to bring positive change in people's lives. Hall contributed to a number of very important ideas. He took a post-Gramscian stance on hegemony in culture, meaning that for Hall, culture was not something to simply appreciate or study, but rather was, in his words, a critical site of social action and intervention, where power relations are both established and potentially unsettled. This means that culture is something that not only influences people's lives, but something that people themselves can influence and act upon as well. In line with this post-Gramscian stance, Hall was one of the principal proponents of reception theory, where he contributed his namesake, Hall's theory of encoding and decoding. Regarding cultural identity, race, and ethnicity, Hall particularly focused on the creation of Black diasporic identities and believed that identity is an ongoing product of history and culture, rather than a discrete finished product. These ideas had a great influence not only in the field of cultural studies, but even beyond the field of academia. His writings on race, gender, sexuality, and identity, and the links between racial prejudice and the media in the 1970s was considered groundbreaking and had a great impact on politics, general forms of social theory, and psychology. Shortly before his passing, a documentary on Stuart Hall's life was released entitled The Stuart Hall Project, from which I will now show you a brief introductory clip.
When I was about 19 or 20, Miles Davis put his finger on my soul. The various moods of Miles Davis matched the evolution of my own feelings. There continued to be a regret for the loss of a life which I might have lived but didn't live.
As we slide out of the 1980s, who's going to define the cultural themes of the next 10 years? No one on the British left thinks harder about this question than Stuart Hall.
Tell me why have they all come to this country?
Not long ago, you were bombing Kosovo. Now, this is a long-term result of that situation. But I don't know how you could describe the people as bogus.
Accommodation and adjustment between black and white is on the agenda.
When I ask anybody where they're from, I expect nowadays to be told an extremely long story. But I think identity is an endless, ever unfinished conversation. We always supposed really something would give us a definition of who we really were, our class position, or our national position, our geographic origins, or where our grandparents came from. And I don't think any one thing any longer will tell us who we are.
This concludes my presentation on Stuart Hall, Godfather of Multiculturalism. Thank you for your attention.